Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out the screens behind me. Those are all the feeds at the CBS News affiliates all across the country. If it's coming in there, it's coming in here. This is CBS News 24/7. Debby soaks the East Coast, causing flash flooding and bringing tornadoes that level homes. Where it's headed next and the bigger impact it could have. Former President Donald Trump says he's now looking forward to a debate with Vice President Kamala Harris next month as she and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, are on the campaign trail in Arizona today. And a third suspect arrested in a foiled terror attack at Taylor Swift's concerts in Vienna. The new details we are learning. But we're going to begin with the flooding and destruction that Debby has left behind, punishing the southeastern United States this week. The post-tropical system has killed at least 8 people across the region, and it is now moving north after hanging over North Carolina. So let's get in to it with CBS News Baltimore reporter Caroline Forbach, who's tracking the latest for us from Annapolis, Maryland. Caroline, it already looks really, really bad behind you. What else can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that it's high tide right now. So this is the peak of the flooding that we've seen so far. I'm told by the Office of Emergency Management that we've had about 4 feet of floodwaters. That's 4 feet above normal levels. And that means that water has gotten into all of these businesses here on Dock Street. You can see employees are working hard to try to clean up what they can. But the problem is the wind just keeps pushing that water up Ego Alley and into the street and then into their businesses. Now, the last time we saw flooding this significant was in January. It was right around the same sort of levels. And some of these businesses had to close for months afterwards because these floodwaters, they get into these businesses, they take out expensive equipment like freezers and ovens and such, and it really can put a damper on things and force them to close for a long time. There were fundraisers, so I know these business owners are struggling at the moment. This is actually a parking lot, and as you can see, the water is all the way up City Dock and even right here on Randall Street and around this traffic circle over here. When I went to get my coffee this morning here at Market House, they told me that they saw fish jumping around outside of their doorway. So that's just a taste of how significant this flood event has been. You can see it's also going around the traffic circle. It's on Compromise Street, which is another big problem area here in Annapolis. And it really screws up traffic around this area. And that's a big problem, especially today, because this is Parents Weekend for the Naval Academy, which is right down the street here. So we have a lot of parents in town. We have a lot of tourists in town. So this is really going to be a big problem throughout the day. We're hoping it's going to recede as the tide recedes, but we'll see how it goes. We're expecting some more bands of wind and rain throughout the day. Now, this flooding, it is significant, but it's not unusual for this area. Believe it or not, parts of City Dock here are actually underwater for 50 to 60 days out of the year. And that's why Annapolis is actually undergoing a huge project to try to prevent flooding in this area. That is going to break ground hopefully sometime next year. But as of right now, business owners and residents are just continuing to deal with the flood impacts as they come. But for now, reporting live here in downtown Annapolis, Caroline Forbach for CBS News, Baltimore.
All right, Caroline, thank you very much for that report. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. All right, Grant, so you heard that reporting from Caroline. What kind of impact is this going to have on us here in the Northeast?
Well, it's interesting, Vlad. You know, it's the same type of impacts that we've seen all across the mid-Atlantic down into the southeast. The flooding impact is the primary concern, but we're seeing an interesting trend with a lot of tornado warnings being spawned from what is now a rapidly moving post-tropical cyclone, Debby. You know, over the last couple of days, the system was moving 5, 6, 7 miles per hour. It is now moving at 35 miles per hour, but still dropping copious amounts of rainfall in excess of 3 to 4 inches of rain in a relatively short period of time. All of those boxes, those dark maroon color boxes, those indicate where there's ongoing flash flooding. That's there from Maryland, the Baltimore area, north into portions of southern and central Pennsylvania. And that's going to extend north as the system continues to rapidly accelerate to the north and east. Now, we do have a moderate risk for flash flooding. Again, that's the primary concern, though I will say the rainfall forecast totals aren't as great as we were originally thinking they could be earlier this week, but still a quick 3 to 4 inches of rain especially along the center of that track and points north. We could still see some flood emergencies as we go through the next couple of days as the remnants of Debby goes to the north and east. We do have that tornado watch in effect today. So tornadoes are a big concern. We've seen several brief spin-up tornadoes over the last couple of days as the remnants of Debby continue to race north. But even outside of those heavy rainfalls and that threat for tornadoes, we're still seeing some gusty winds, sustained winds, 20 to 25 miles per hour. Philly right now, we're seeing some wind gusts up around 35 to 40 miles per hour. So it's a lot to keep an eye on, especially as Debby finally exits to the northeast. It's going to make for a great weekend ahead. You see that cooler air that's coming in behind Debby? That refreshing air is actually going to be moving into the northeast over the weekend. So places like Minneapolis, Minnesota today are looking at temperatures running 15 to nearly 20 degrees below normal, 69 for the high in Minneapolis. Now, we do also have some hot and humid conditions across the southern tier back into Texas, where it feels like temperatures are going to be well into the 100s. But I'll tell you what, all along the East Coast, everybody is relieved that Debby is finally exiting, but still we have to watch for that flooding and that tornadic threat across the Northeast as we go throughout the entire day today. Vlad, a lot more to talk about coming up here in just a few minutes. We'll send it back to you.
All right, we'll check in with you, Grant, just a little bit later in the show. Let's go now to CBS News correspondent Christian Benavidez, who's following the path of destruction Debby left behind in North Carolina. Christian, what is the situation where you are right now? It does not look good.
Vlad, we're in Lucama, North Carolina. Debby spawned at least 6 tornadoes here across the southeast, and one of them struck right here. It destroyed a middle school nearby, and take a look at this home right next to me. In fact, there was a man who was killed by the tornado. He was inside the home. This happened in the overnight hours, not yesterday, but the day prior. And when it happened, his neighbors tried to rush in and help, but they couldn't. And then yesterday morning, a search and rescue team recovered the body out of this home. So certainly these tornadoes having an impact. We know that the death toll of Debby stands at least 7 people. And it's now moving up towards the northeast. Down here, there are still concerns for flooding. Yesterday, we were still under a tornado watch, but it appears that the worst of the weather has come and gone. Vlad?
All right, Christian, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're getting a new look at what happened moments before would-be assassin fired shots at former President Donald Trump last month during a rally in Pennsylvania. CBS News has obtained this body cam video showing a Butler Township police officer being hoisted up to the roof of a building where he spotted the gunman. The officer then grabs onto the ledge, hangs there for a couple of seconds before dropping back down to the ground. And this morning, we're also hearing the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are concerned about the potential for a retaliatory attack at the DNC. So let's bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga for more on this. Nicole, this is terrifying. What can you tell us?
Yeah, hi, Vlad. This threat assessment, authored by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Chicago Police Department, plus other agencies, local police in Illinois, really outlines a lot of concerns surrounding the Democratic National Convention, an event that will host over 50,000 visitors to Chicago, dignitaries, U.S. senators and representatives, some public figures, state and local officials. And this bulletin highlights everything from the potential for a lone wolf attack to ISIS-inspired threats, all the way to vehicle ramming, drone threats, human trafficking concerns, food and agricultural sector vulnerabilities. One big takeaway, this key line here: the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are on alert for potential retaliatory acts of violence following the July 13th assassination attempt of the former president. There is chatter on social media and likely in more encrypted platforms from communities that have encouraged or even cheered on that act of violence online. And experts will tell you these bulletins are not an academic exercise. You know, look at this week alone. An Iranian-linked assassination plot emerging, new details on that Pennsylvania rally, killing 1, injuring 2, in addition to a bullet coming inches away from the former president, and an apparent ISIS-inspired plot linked to Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna. That said, this bulletin published earlier this week is a regular practice. We saw one for the RNC, the Super Bowl, the inauguration. In fact, they're a requirement for what's called a Tier 1 event, an event demanding the highest level of federal law enforcement assistance. And you'll see every federal law enforcement agency on the ground in Chicago come August 19th. Some are already there, from Secret Service to Capitol Police to dozens of local law enforcement agencies nationwide that lend their personnel to events like this. And by the way, one last thing, because U.S. Secret Service and others within the federal government, federal law enforcement, demand so much support from local law enforcement, you're also going to hear a lot of gratitude from them in the next days and weeks. That is what I'm hearing from federal law enforcement officials, particularly in the wake of some finger pointing about what went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania. Federal officers and agents know they need local police to succeed, and we should see greater efforts to communicate that, especially because this moment demands it. Vlad?
All right, Nicole, thank you so much for that reporting and those new details. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Israel has confirmed it will send negotiators to talks next after the U.S. and other mediators called on both Israel and Hamas to join urgent discussions to get a ceasefire deal over the line. Joining us live from Tel Aviv for more on this is CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio. Ramy, this is a new development. What can you tell us about it?
Vlad, hi there. Yes, this looks to represent potentially hope that finally a ceasefire can get over the line, especially after the past 10 months of trying. But it also represents frustration on all sides that it has taken more than 10 months and still there has not been a resolution to this crisis. But this call for what they're describing as urgent talks coming from the president of the United States, the emir of Qatar, as well as the president of Egypt, coming with just now 6 days left. August 15th is the date that they're looking towards in order to bring together the warring parties, Israel and Hamas, for some kind of final resolution, either in the capital of Qatar, that's Doha, or the capital of Egypt, Cairo. What they say, to close all remaining gaps and to commence implementation of the deal without further delay. Now, Israel has agreed to that August 15 deadline, but so far we are still waiting for a reply from Hamas. That has not happened yet.
And so this comes, Ramy, as you know, as the Israeli forces have launched a new ground operation in Gaza's southern city of Khan Yunis. What's going on there?
Right. Gaza, Khan Yunis is, and the area around it, is the second most populous city in the Gaza Strip. And this operation is now the third ground operation that the IDF is saying that they've embarked on since October 7th. According to the Israel Defense Forces, they said that they received intelligence of militants operating in the area, and that they also saw militant infrastructure in that area too. They said that they did attack, and that they attacked about 30 targets, and that several, what they say, Hamas militants were killed. In addition, this comes after a call for evacuation from that area, from Khan Yunis towards the coast, Al-Mawasi, the humanitarian refugee camp on the coast. We have seen people fleeing towards the coast there. But again, this is a continual strike, targeting and strike across the Gaza Strip, even as tensions are still rising across the Mideast, as we, of course, still wait on the possible retaliation from Iran and Hezbollah.
All right, Ramy Inocencio for us reporting from Tel Aviv. Ramy, we appreciate you. Thanks. Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump will face off in their first debate next month. Coming up, how the campaigns are preparing. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have both officially agreed to at least one debate before November's election. Trump held a press conference from Mar-a-Lago yesterday where he announced the debates he's agreed to and then went on the attack against his opponent.
So we have September 4th, September 10th, and September 25th. We have spoken to the heads of the network, and it's all been confirmed. The other side has to agree to the terms. They may or may not agree. I don't know if they're going to agree. She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight.
Okay, let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Gavaz, who has more on this for us. Camilo, what is the Harris team saying about these debates?
Good morning, Vlad, from the battleground state of Arizona. Vice President Harris was asked about these proposed debates, and she said that she is committed to debating former President Donald Trump for the ABC News debate on September 10th. She did not commit to the other proposed debates by NBC News and Fox that Trump has said he is willing to participate in. So that is still an open question as to whether the vice president will be debating the former president in the other debates hosted by Fox News and NBC, but it looks, according to ABC and the two sides, that the debate on September 10th will be occurring.
Okay, let me ask you about something else, Camilo. CBS News has learned that the League of United Latin American Citizens will endorse Vice President Harris. That is now the first time the nation's oldest and largest Latino civil rights organization has endorsed a presidential candidate. I was pretty surprised by that. How big of a deal is this? And I guess more importantly, is how much influence does this organization have with this particular voting bloc?
Well, look, Vlad, the Latino voting electorate will be absolutely critical in this election, and it is very much up for grabs in November. We know that for the past elections, Democrats have won the majority, the plurality of Latino votes, but we know that that support has been eroding in recent years, and President Trump, former President Trump, that is, has been making inroads with the Latino community, and that vote is absolutely crucial here in battleground states like Arizona and Nevada. Here in Arizona, it makes up 25% of the electorate, the Latino voting bloc. In Nevada, it is 22%. So both campaigns are trying to court these voters and galvanize them. And on the issue of immigration, we have seen that the vice president has tried to go on the political offensive on this issue, Vlad, by saying that former President Trump and Republicans scuttled that bipartisan border security deal that would have enacted tougher reforms at the U.S.-Mexico border, especially as it relates to asylum. But, of course, former President Donald Trump has sought to turn this race here into a referendum on issues like inflation and immigration by tying Harris to the record levels of illegal crossings at the border, Vlad.
All right, Camilo, thank you very much for your reporting, friend. We'll talk to you later. For more on what's happening between these campaigns, let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Jake Rosen, who's covering the Trump campaign. He's in Bozeman, Montana. So, Jake, a Harris spokesperson told CBS News that the Veep is, quote, open and eager to discuss more debates, but that Trump first has to show up to the September 10th debate first. In other words, a debate on Fox News is off the table, including all the other dates that Trump was talking about. What's the Trump angle in announcing these debates that the other side hasn't agreed to yet?
Well, this has kind of been what the Trump campaign has tried to do from the beginning of this campaign, when it was holding out from the primary debate, saying it didn't feel like it needed to. But now, as Vice President Harris, has not taken a formal press conference. Yes, she did speak to the press yesterday on the tarmac outside of Air Force 2. But the Trump campaign has really tried to force Kamala Harris to go out in public, to do some kind of press conference like Donald Trump did yesterday in West Palm Beach, and to kind of force her into the limelight. Now, obviously, we know in classic Trump fashion, though, proposing 3 debate dates as they have kind of been trying to negotiate it out, and especially adding one before the previously scheduled September 10th debate with ABC. The Kamala Harris campaign has kind of tried to back away from all of those proposals, though it seems like they might have left the door open to that NBC debate after the ABC debate in late September.
All right, Jake, let me ask you what the Trump camp is saying about what their candidate said in that press conference yesterday. A number of falsehoods, including, I guess, ones that are not really important to people who are worried about policy and about the numerous things that they have to deal with every day at the kitchen table. But his crowd size, bigger than Martin Luther King Jr.'s crowd size. Some story about Willie Brown, which Willie Brown has refuted. He's actually said it's a lie. It sounds like Trump was mixing Willie Brown up with perhaps somebody else. And those are just some of those falsehoods that he stated. What are they saying about trying to keep this candidate on track to talk about the issues that matter to the American people?
Well, I think that's the difficulty with kind of where this campaign is at right now. We heard our colleague Caitlin Huey Burns ask Donald Trump yesterday whether he felt he needed to shift his campaign strategy since President Biden dropped off the top of that ticket. He said no, but at the same time, and he was asked about the crowd size for Kamala Harris, he laughed it off and also falsely claimed that she only had a couple thousand people at her events this week, which is not true. They've had a massive turnout of about 12,000 at one event and 15,000 at another. So we've kind of seen, Donald Trump, as the campaign has really tried to adjust to a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz ticket, trying to redefine her, that Donald Trump has had to go out in the public and, defend kind of where his campaign is at, and that opens himself up to kind of these more preposterous and false statements.
All right, Jake Rosen traveling with the Trump camp. Thanks so much, Jake. Appreciate you. All right, let's go back to weather now. Tornado threats and intense rain from Debby have put a damper on air travel out of Washington, D.C. We're going to take you there next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Taking a look at some of our top stories, prosecutors have requested a 3-week delay in Donald Trump's federal election interference case. They say the Department of Justice needs more time to analyze the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. The justices ruled last month that presidents are entitled to some immunity from criminal prosecution after leaving office. Rapper Travis Scott was arrested at a Paris hotel after what police called an altercation. French police say Scott got into a fight with his own bodyguard. Never a good thing. It escalated when a security guard at the hotel stepped in. That's even worse. Scott was seen earlier in the day, though, cheering on the U.S. men's basketball team. His representatives have not commented. 3 deans at Columbia University have resigned after texts they exchanged about Jewish life on campus were revealed. Columbia's president said the texts were, quote, not only unprofessional, but disturbingly touched on ancient anti-Semitic tropes. A 4th dean involved in the text message exchange has chosen not to resign and says he's committed to fixing the damage he's caused. Okay, while Debby is no longer a tropical storm, the system is still causing issues for travelers. Thousands of flights have been canceled or delayed outright into or out of the United States so far. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve is at Reagan National Airport in Washington. Chris, what are you hearing from travelers?
Well, we're seeing delays stack up, which is kind of what we expected. Here in the D.C. area, we had about a 2 to 3 hour window of really heavy rain, tornado warnings in and out. That paused traffic here at Reagan National Airport. I'm watching a plane come in to land now. So flights are moving, but we are seeing a significant amount of delays, about a 30-minute average delay here at Reagan National. Up in the New York area, you may see delays in closer to an hour or so. And it's going to sort of be a day where there will be periods where there's going to be heavy rain, thunderstorm that'll pause things, and then it's how strong do these winds get. At a certain point, you get to a threshold where flights have to slow down. But most flyers we talked to this morning felt cautiously optimistic. They were taking the morning flight, so that gave them a lot of buffer to get out. The folks we talked to, when we talked to them, they're like, no, we're on time, we're fine. Their flight's at least an hour late. They're still here. So, that's not quite going as planned for them and their 10-month-old, but they should get out today.
So then, Chris, how are airlines responding to these issues?
Well, so they've been watching the forecast very closely over the last several days, Vlad, and this is the type of storm where they feel pretty good that they can operate in. Everybody expected delays. The question mark really was, what would the FAA do as far as how much traffic they would allow in? Would it be a normal arrival rate, normal departure rate, or would they slow things down? The expectation is that they're going to slow arrivals and departures throughout the day at some of these airports. So delays are going to stack up. This feels like this storm's going to be more of a delay driver. You're going to get to where you're going late, but probably not a huge cancel generator. I mean, we're about 260 cancellations so far today. We'll see more than a normal day, but probably not, some of those like meltdown level cancellations where folks are stuck in the airport for days. That doesn't look like what's shaping up here. But it's been a bruising week for flyers in and out of the Northeast, and it's just another trying day. We're talking approaching 10,000 cancellations since Friday, most of those in the Northeast. And so, and I think we're at 65,000 delays in that window, too. So it's just been a frustrating week for flyers, and today's going to be another frustrating day.
All right, Van Cleve, 10,000 cancellations. You promised Gayle King she'd get to wherever she needs to go. So I don't know. Work your magic, baby.
And, as long as she's on a morning flight, I think Gayle's going to be okay. And we'll I assume that Gayle has special status with the FAA that, if it's Gayle King Air, she gets going.
Exactly. Chris Van Cleef for us. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about Debby, which is now a post-tropical cyclone, but of course it's still causing significant weather disruptions. As you just heard from Chris Van Cleef, this is happening in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Heavy rain, flash flooding, and even tornadoes are possible from Virginia all the way up to Vermont. So CBS News correspondent Christian Benavidez is following the path of Debby for us. Christian, Debby is on its way out, but which areas are going to be hit the hardest as it moves out?
Vlad, that system now going into the Northeast, but down here we're still watching the potential for flooding. We're also, last night we were still under a tornado watch, and you can see some utility crews are actually out here as this community tries to get back to normal. This is one of the 6 tornadoes that was spawned by Debby caused this destruction. There was a man, in fact, who was in his home in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, he passed. This fell on him. Neighbors rushed in trying to help, but they couldn't. Yesterday morning, a search and rescue team found his body there. At this point, this community here, Lucama in North Carolina, just trying to recover, trying to get back to normal. We saw a number of communities yesterday. Bladenboro here, also in North Carolina, that was impacted by flooding. Businesses there still working to get back to normal. So this system certainly dumped a ton of rain here. There were some water rescues that took place, one of a number of teens in Raleigh. So certainly this was a system that brought some heavy downpours, spawned a couple of tornadoes, and now the rebuilding begins.
All right, Christian, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Grant.
All right, Vlad, yeah, keeping a close eye on Debby as it finally begins to accelerate out of really the continental United States. It's going to be heading up towards Canada. But again, it's weakening as it does so, but still bringing a lot of concerns, especially across the Northeast. You can see all that moisture, all the cloud cover from Debby, not just in the Northeast, but still trailing back into the mid-Atlantic states and portions of the Southeast this morning. So it continues to be an issue, even though it's not a hurricane and now not even a tropical depression. It's a post-tropical system, but still it brings along with it all of the tropical threats. One difference today, though, is that Debby, or at least the remnants of Debby, it's moving a lot faster, thank goodness, right? The wind speeds earlier this week, I shouldn't say wind speeds, the movement of this system was only around 5 to 7 miles per hour. It has quickly accelerated. It's now moving at 35 miles per hour. But again, bringing all of those tropical threats with it, including tornadoes. These are all the tornado reports across the mid-Atlantic over the last 24 hours. And we're going to continue to have to watch that threat for spin-up tornadoes as Debby moves through parts of New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and points north into New York later on this afternoon. This tornado watch is going to be in effect until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Look at the radar here. You see those areas of heavy rain, but those little polygons, those dark red polygons, those indicating areas where we're watching ongoing flash flooding. As has been the calling card with Debby, flooding is a concern, but not as big of a concern as it was back into the Carolinas and in Georgia, of course, Florida earlier on this week. But still, a moderate risk for flooding where some places could pick up 3, 4, maybe even 5 inches of rainfall in a relatively short period of time. But again, because Debby's moving so quickly, it won't have an opportunity to drop as much rainfall as what it did earlier on this week. Elsewhere around the country, we've got a little taste of fall on the way. Places like Minneapolis, looking at high temperatures running 15 degrees colder than normal today with highs in the upper 60s. Meanwhile, still summertime, still very much hot and humid across the deep south. But that colder air across the Northeast will arrive. Look at this forecast for New York City. Yeah, showers and storms associated with Debby today. But look at the forecast through the weekend. Highs in the mid-80s, a beautiful summer weekend. And that beautiful weather continues in the low 80s as we go into early next week. I mentioned the heat across the south. It's heat advisory worthy with those heat advisories from Texas into Florida. Actual temperatures climbing into the mid and upper 90s, if not 100 degrees. Vlad, Houston at 100. I know you'll take the heat over the cold, but 108 degrees in Texas is hot. And that humidity, the Florida humidity, is big across the Sunshine State, too. It feels like temperatures in Tampa today approaching 106 degrees. It's steamy out there, but at least in the Northeast, it's going to feel much better as we go into the weekend. Of course, once Debby leaves.
All right, that's some good news. Grant, thank you very much. Austria's interior minister says another person has been detained in connection to the alleged ISIS-linked terror plot at the now-canceled Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna. The 18-year-old Iraqi national is now the third person taken into custody. Police have already arrested a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old in connection to the planned attack. Taylor Swift has not commented publicly on those canceled dates. We're also following developments on the Russia-Ukraine border this morning as both sides exchange heavy fire. Ukrainian officials say a Russian strike on a supermarket in eastern Ukraine killed at least 10 people and injured dozens more. Now, while Ukraine's military says it hit an airfield deep inside Russia, damaging stockpiles of guided munitions. And Russia has declared a federal-level emergency in the Kursk region, as it says its forces continue to try and repel a Ukrainian incursion. Following the very latest for us from the UK, CBS News foreign correspondent Ian Lee. So, Ian, what are you hearing from your sources on the ground at this hour?
Hi, Vlad. Yeah, we're still trying to see through the fog of war. The Ukrainians still aren't commenting on the assault into the Kursk region. Late yesterday, we did hear from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who said Moscow must feel the consequences for its invasion, but didn't mention this operation. The Kremlin has declared a state of emergency in the Kursk region. Moscow says it's moving in reinforcements, including heavy armor and missile launchers. Reports suggest that Ukrainian troops are operating about 6 miles inside Russian territory. That would make this the deepest cross-border incursion by Kyiv since Moscow launched its invasion a little over 2 years ago. We're also getting a glimpse of the situation from videos posted online. We're seeing destroyed Russian equipment and damaged villages. And this does come as Ukraine says it hit an airfield deep inside Russia, destroying a warehouse storing guided bombs that have been so devastating in Ukraine. Vlad?
So, Ian, what's the strategic value of this incursion by Ukraine?
Yeah, this operation holds a number of benefits. First off, it's just a strong boost to morale. Ukraine has been playing defense for months now. Having their troops maneuvering inside Russia will definitely improve the mood of the troops undergoing this operation, as well as those on the other front lines. This assault will likely ease the pressure off those Ukrainian troops stationed in the fronts in the east and in the south by launching an assault into Russia. We're seeing Moscow divert those critical resources and manpower. The incursion is also embarrassing for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Moscow will likely have to move more resources permanently to make sure that border with Ukraine is defended. But the big question everyone wants to know right now is, what is Ukraine's endgame? What do they hope to achieve? Are they going in permanently, or will they pull out eventually? Vlad?
All right, Ian Lee reporting for us from London. Ian, thank you very much. All right, let's pivot now to the Olympics. Will Team USA bring home another Olympic medal? If I had a magic 8-ball, I'd say, what do they usually say? Chances are yes. What is it? Like, chances are yes. The men's basketball team survived a nail-biter against Serbia yesterday. We have all the highlights coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, there's been a lot of heavy news the last couple of days, but this is a fun story. A TSA explosive dog received a retirement party unlike any other after years of service. CBS News Pittsburgh reporter Ross Gadati has the story.
This here is Barrow. He's one of the very special agents for Homeland Security out this way, and they threw him a retirement party like no other. They say every dog has its day. And for Homeland Security Explosives Detection K9 Barrow, that day was today.
He's been with me through a lot in these last 7 or 8 years, thick and thin.
Agent Lawrence Sharp is Barrow's handler. For Sharp, he's more than just a dog.
When I'm sad, he's there. When I'm happy, he's there. And we have a bond that you really can't quantify.
The two have been together since 2017. Barrow even has his own baseball card with some Dog Hall of Fame statistics.
His career stats, I can't share everything with you, obviously, but we've worked a lot of major events. He's probably saved thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives over his career. That's why I love him.
Some of Barrow's canine friends showed up to say goodbye to their bomb-sniffing buddy. So what's next for Barrow? Well, now that he's retiring his badge, he's going to live with Agent Sharp and be nothing but a hound dog.
He knows it's home. He knows that means he gets to relax. I'm not searching anything. I'm going to go lay down over here. Stop talking to me, Dad.
Agent Sharp says he will, however, be treating his best friend to a seaside vacation soon.
Ocean. I think he wants to swim. And he will be swimming a lot.
Agent Sharp will now head up the Homeland Security canine operation at the airport. And yes, it won't be quite the same going to work without this very, very good boy.
I'm going to miss working with him a lot. Sometimes it's a little sad thinking about. I love everything about him.
At Pittsburgh International Airport, Ross Godotti, KDKA TV News. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Let's talk about being good. The U.S. men's basketball team, they overcame a 13-point fourth quarter deficit to beat Serbia and advance to the gold medal game. They'll face France for a shot at bringing home their fifth straight gold medal. CBS Saturday Morning and CBS News and sports correspondent Dana Jacobson is following the games for us from Paris. Dana, this legacy game for players is something special for folks like Steph Curry and LeBron James.
Yeah, well, Steph Curry, one of the guys on this team that has never won an Olympic gold medal. So you saw him take over late in the fourth quarter. And I kind of said, if you watch Steph at all in the NBA, you know that's what Steph does. You mentioned that deficit. They were down 17 at one point. And we've talked a lot about this over the last couple weeks. You know, yes, it's Team USA. It's an all-star roster from the NBA. But all of these other countries have all-stars on their squads as well from the NBA, like Nikola Jokic, who was one of the stars last night for Serbia. You saw the devastation from the Serbian players, the absolute joy from a group of NBA players who, among them, I can't even count the NBA championships. That was a pleasure to see because they came together as a different kind of team and now go up against a French team that, I said this earlier, has bullied their way in because they've beaten teams that nobody expected them to, certainly using that home crowd, but also the mental will and the ability on top of it to battle their way into the gold medal game, which will be tomorrow.
All right, well, you know, we'll all be watching that. But Dana, let's switch to track and field and talk about Noah Lyles, who finished. It's 4 letters. What do you guys want from me? It's 4 letters. I'm just kidding, Dana. So let's talk about this performance yesterday, right? This man won the bronze, and that's all together impressive because he tested positive for COVID-19. Walk us through all that. I mean, clearly the IOC is saying that he didn't break any rules, but that's a pretty gutsy move.
It is, and also remember, he has asthma. He's talked about that, and this is a respiratory illness. Yeah, everything that we have learned, they followed CDC protocols, IOC, the U.S. Track and Field Association. What is impressive is this young man knew that even though he had tested positive for COVID, he wanted to race. This is his chance. He had won gold in the 100 meters. He was trying to win 3 golds possibly at this Olympics, 100 in 100 meters, 200, and then the 4x100 relay. And Vlad, the one thing we don't know, we do not believe that he will be racing tonight in the 4x100 relay, but he's not disqualified from it. Afterwards, he said that he'd just leave it up to his teammates to decide because they had to qualify without him because he was racing in the 200 meters. Later, he posted on Instagram, "I believe my Olympics are done." So, yeah, we do believe we've seen the last of him, but I suppose you never know. I suppose it could happen. I think it's unlikely. But what an incredible moment for him, knowing what this would mean to him. And you hope that there's no impact on health. But he wanted to be there. He wanted to race and then to win bronze, even while suffering. It says a lot about who he is and the strength that he has.
Yeah, for sure. All right, before we let you go, let's talk about breakdancing, specifically as the Olympics are calling it, the sport of breaking. It's going to make its debut this weekend. I mean, yeah, you and I are both, we're popping and locking, but let's talk about Team USA. And how embarrassing will it be if, like, Team USA doesn't win the gold in this?
Well, no, here's the thing. So, look, it came from New York, came from the streets of the Bronx. We've done some stories on this. But breaking spread in the 80s and 90s globally. So I know what you're saying. Yes, I do believe the U.S. really wants to win this, but it was very big in Paris for a while, in Japan also. what's really neat is just to see the Olympic Committee embracing something that is both artistic and athletic, and that's what you see in what we call the power moves. Vlad, that's when I know you were doing this. You found the cardboard and you were spinning on your back when you were a kid. That's a power move. You've got the top rock, I believe, and that's anything where it would be the popping and locking while you're standing up like that. So it'll be fun to watch. I think it's really cool. They don't know their music before they go out there. They have to find that creative ability and the athletic ability. So I am looking forward to that. And can I do one more thing, Vlad? I think you've seen this, but this is the Frige. This is the mascot. And he's been all over. You've seen him. And at first, people were like, what is that? This is the hat of the French Revolution. Revolutionaries wear it. And it comes with a little story that they wanted to have a revolution in sports. And that is what we have seen here, thanks to the Frige. I've got mine. The revolution is underway, coming back at you.
Oh, man, bring me one of those, Dana, please. I will live vicariously through you and the Chapeau Rouge. Dana Jacobson reporting from Paris. Dana, thank you so much. I love it.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, let's get back to following what is happening with Debby and the impact it will have on the East Coast. We're going to have much more coverage throughout the day. We'll be right back. Tropical depression Debby may be weakening, but the storm is still causing major damage across the East Coast as it moves north. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Brandon Goldner is in Edgewater Park, New Jersey, just outside of Philly.
We're in Edgewater Park, New Jersey, where all eyes are focused on this retention pond in the middle of this community. There is concern that this retention pond could overflow and flood this community again following the remnants of Debby coming through this area. This is what it looked like out here Wednesday morning following storms Tuesday evening. Water covering the streets out here, submerging cars, flooding homes. Firefighters evacuated people from 15 homes in this neighborhood earlier this week. People we spoke to say they're dreading the rain that's forecasted to come to this area today. They fear this area will flood once again.
What I'm hoping for is not as much as expected, and what I'm bracing for, because now I know what can happen, I'm bracing for the worst again.
The town did bring out these pumps to lower the water level of the retention pond. We're going to continue to monitor the water levels out here as residents here remain concerned about what could happen later in the day. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Brandon, thank you very much. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. Grant.
Vlad, that rain that we had earlier this week in the Philadelphia area was sort of independent of Debby, but still very slow moving storms that dropped a lot of rainfall. Tropical moisture is tropical moisture. It doesn't have to directly be related to a tropical system to produce flooding, but the rain that we're seeing moving into the Northeast this morning is exactly that. It's associated with a post-tropical cyclone, that being Debby, of course. Moving very quickly, though, so that's the good news, but still bringing a lot of that heavy rainfall with it. Winds, it's moving at around 37 miles per hour right now, so this thing is really accelerating, but not only bringing that threat for heavy rain and flooding, but we're seeing some ongoing tornado warnings. Right now, moving through northern Pennsylvania, an ongoing tornado warning moving into New York State. That in the Northampton area. So we'll have to really watch that area for the threat for some tornadoes. But anywhere really east of the storm, not just the heavy rainfall, but also that tornado threat. And we're seeing some ongoing flash floodings as well as that heavy tropical moisture builds in from the south. Forecast rainfall totals. All right, guys, we could pick up between 2 to 3 inches of rain in a relatively short period of time. That could cause flooding anywhere, but especially in those flood-prone areas. We'll really have to watch out for some flooding. The good news, though, is Debby exits to the north and east. Cooler, more seasonable, if not fall-like weather arriving across the northern tier states into the Midwestern states. Across the south, it's still very much summertime. High temperatures approaching the triple digits in Houston today. Feels like temperatures, Vlad, anywhere between 100 to 110 degrees. The good news, though, Debby, something we've been tracking all week long, it is getting out of here today.
That is some good news. Grant, thank you very much, my friend. Have a nice weekend. Okay, an encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.